Namaskar. Today I'd like to talk about forgiveness. In our channel we have explained about the 10 universal principles called the yamas and niyamas. And these principles guide us in every aspect, in every situation in life, both internally and dealing with others externally. And there are another 15 points that are like applied aspects of the yama niyama. And they are called 15 shilas. Shila here means a conduct. So these shilas, or these points, they help us to create a beautiful combination of a strong personality, a strong determination, and also a loving heart. So the first of these 15 is forgiveness. And forgiveness comes on 3 levels, actually. Forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, and forgiveness of the collective body. When it comes to forgiveness of self, some people, they suffer by what's called the sinner's complex. I'm no good. I've made many mistakes in my life. I'm not worthy to do meditation. I'm just not ready, or I'm not capable. So this sinner psychology is a type of inferiority complex, and it depresses and constricts the mind. You know, my master used to remind us, your eyes are in the front of your head, not behind. So look forward, and even better, look to your goal. In this channel, we teach about merging or becoming one, associating with that invisible loving presence in us and in everything. So that goal can constantly inspire us to be better and better persons. So, you know, to err is human. We all make mistakes throughout our life. The only people who don't make mistakes are people that don't make any efforts. And, you know, Thomas Edison, he said, I found 10,000 different ways not to discover the light bulb when he actually found out how to generate light through a bulb. So we have to love ourselves, then we can love others. Forgiving ourselves would enable us eventually also to forgive others. So this is the first of the 3, and the second is forgiving others, of course. Yes, there are bad people. We may be victims of someone who's committed a grievous harm, has hurt us very, very much in our life, and it's very hard for us to forgive and to forget that incident. It's normal. But the other side of the coin is that as long as we're attached to that action or remembering that incident or thinking about the person who did us that harm, we're still bound by that. And it doesn't help us, nor for our health, nor for our spiritual growth. So in this way, we should forgive as much as possible, whenever possible. You know, there was a story I read about a school teacher, and she did an experiment with her children, and she asked her children to carry a sack of potatoes, and they would have to carry it from, you know, home to school and so on. And they had to do this for 14 days. And by the, you know, second week, by the 10th, 11th day, the potatoes were starting to rot and give off a bad smell. And the students were complaining, teacher, please, can we not stop this? It's so bad, the smell. It troubles us so much. And then she said, you see, my children, this is what happens when we're unable to love others or to forgive others. And just like that, those potatoes smell so bad, that poisons our mind, our heart. And so it's true that lack of forgiveness, it weakens our hearts. And it can lead to different types of illnesses related to a weakened immune system. Yes, there are some cases where we should not forgive others, and that is, for example, when somebody has not learned their mistake, and they may commit the same harm or same action to somebody else. So in that case, we cannot forgive them. At least externally, we should not show that we are forgiving them. And then it comes to the collective body. You know, the collective body means no individual has a right to forgive a mistake which is done to a group of people. But there's one case that I remember in my life where I was living that time in South Africa, and it was 1990, and Nelson Mandela, the leader of the African National Congress, was released from prison that time. And, you know, it was a very electrifying moment, a very, very inspiring moment in the history of that country, because the people had been, their leader had been freed, and eventually it led to a free South Africa. And Mandela was unique because he didn't take revenge. He forgave. And he actually created this environment of tolerance and understanding, and that helped to save a civil war in his country. So, you know, there are so many examples in history of, you know, that loving presence we call supreme consciousness. And it manifests as an unconditional love. And whether it was Saul, who became St. Paul, or in the Indian literature, there's the story of Ratnakar, a very hardened criminal. He became Valmiki, the author of the Ramayana. In the case of my own master, the very first initiate was a hardened criminal. So in this way, there are examples in literature and in history of unconditional love and the effects and the results of that type of forgiving attitude. So in this way, if we can learn to forgive, maybe we can't forget. That may not be possible. But sometimes this lack of forgiveness, we pass it on to our children, our grandchildren, and it goes generations back. So this is not healthy for our own growth and for the growth of a collective body. So this is about forgiveness. I hope you may have your own experiences about this, and you may share in the comments so that we may learn from each other. Thank you. Namaskar.